Inside Indiana Overtime. I'm Zach Osterman. That's Alex McCarthy. The restrooms are that way. And we are in the tunnel, and I guess what's the entrance to the tunnel between Assembly Hall and Cook Hall. I don't know if we're allowed to remove the restroom sign. We probably are because there's nothing down there, but we thought we'd leave it in for visual effect. I'm drinking a Diet Coke.
Apparently the restroom, if you're just looking at a flat screen here.
I don't know what you meant by that. Anyway, the
No,
point
that's
is...
pointing because the arrow is pointing at my head here. So.
Okay, well, if you're still watching, we're talking about Indiana, Ohio State. We're talking about a chance for Indiana to win an outright Big Ten championship on its own floor. First time in 20 years, Indiana will have accomplished that. It'll be on senior night. It'll be, interestingly, actually, the same amount of time since Calbert Chaney broke the all-time Big Ten scoring record, and it's basically probably just going to be nuts in here tomorrow night. It's the last home game of the season. This is surely going to be, I think last year's senior class and this year's senior class are probably going to be remembered in very much the same way. And Maurice Creek probably to an extent too, whenever he graduates, which we would assume maybe next year. As kind of the two that really bought into Indiana when there was nothing to buy into at Indiana. Obviously Sheehy and Oladipo were part of that, but I mean, those were the two classes that committed and signed to a program that had, committed and or recommitted and signed to a program that had, like 8 scholarship players at one point, was starting walk-ons, and we could run down the list of all the facts and figures of those first couple of years, but these are the two classes that I think are always going to be treated like the Rick Pitino, the ones that I don't remember what they're called, like the Immortals or whatever they call them in Kentucky, the people that didn't leave when Pitino took over. And it's going to be, Tom Crean even said, he said we can't get caught up in the emotion, but there's really not going to be any way to take the emotion out of this night being tomorrow night. And it really doesn't feel like there is. It feels like this is just kind of a perfect storm of everything that could happen to make this game as big as possible.
Yeah, and it helps that, with all of that outside stuff, Ohio State's still a really good, legitimately very good team coming in here, which makes it even, that much more entertaining of a matchup tomorrow. And just looking at Ohio State, they've won I think 4 or 5 since IU beat them at in Columbus.
Beat Michigan State.
Beat Minnesota, who then beat Indiana a week later. So there's just stuff coming from every side to make tomorrow night just kind of this big combination of hype. Tom Crean was saying that they've played in a bunch of games like this year where there's been a bunch of hype, a bunch of hoopla, a bunch of not only highly ranked teams, but teams that could go, teams where there's emotion in the game as well. And it's not just.
Well, they've been they've been in a lot of big environments, home and road, game day, Big Ten ACC Challenge. I think this is their third 9 p.m. start, so this is their third true primetime ESPN game. And that probably gives Indiana a little bit of an advantage. But, I think the big part of this, too, and this is something that Tom Crean talked about last year, and people don't talk about it as much this year, but I think it's really worth mentioning, is that this is the last home game for a senior class of students that has been through a lot. Tom Crean talked a lot last year about this time of year about how important it was for Indiana to finish strong and kind of give some of these memories to its senior the
kids
students,
who have seen a lot of losses.
who were graduating and had stuck with it for a really long time, and I think that it's not as talked about this year, but I think that there's still kind of going to be that element in this building of there are a lot of people, 4th and 5th year seniors both, who have seen a lot in Assembly Hall, who have been a part of a lot of really good environments, and it's only been maybe the last year or two that those environments are really translating into victories. And now I think they're probably going to walk in here and feel a little bit, maybe even a lot like this is a way for them to win a Big Ten title too. I mean, it's not the same situation at all as the 1983 Big Ten title, and I don't know if they'll ever hang a separate banner just for this one. But this is, this is almost kind of a communal moment that Indiana is coming to if it can win tomorrow night. I mean, I honestly wouldn't even be terribly surprised if the students storm the court. And should they, I really don't care. I'm not going to storm the court. But, it wouldn't shock me, and it would make sense in its own way. And I think that that's kind of where Indiana is right now. Every big game, every big win has been building to this moment. And obviously Indiana has bigger goals than this. Mm. But, a lot of people will tell you, I mean, I think four of Indiana's 5 championships have included a Big Ten title. Big national championship seasons have also seen them win at least a share of the Big Ten title. So a lot of people treat this kind of accomplishment as sort of a stepping stone to bigger things in the postseason. And I think that particularly this year, because they've got the chance to do it at home on senior night against a team they've already beaten by 13 on the road, albeit, yes, a very good team, I think there's kind of this feeling like we need to see Indiana win this game, because winning this game in this environment proves just one more important thing about this particular group and its mental makeup, its emotional makeup, as much as we would talk about its talent or its execution or the technical aspects of what makes Indiana a good team.
Yeah, and I don't remember who it was a couple weeks ago. I don't remember who it was in the press room. Just through conversation, I think someone said, this. I don't see this senior class letting this team lose against Ohio State to end the year at home here. I mean, it's just kind of a game that you don't necessarily specifically expect Indiana to win, but it's a game that it would just, everything is kind of lining up. Like a win would just be such a huge, like you said, just such a huge moment, emotionally, and then in terms of tying up the Big Ten title and just providing that Cody Zeller said tonight that it's great to have a share of the Big Ten title, but we want it on our own, basically. And tomorrow would just be just that culmination of both, that desire from this team, in particular, the Zellers, the Farrells, the team that hasn't lost very much in the past couple of years, especially at home. That goal combined with kind of the Hulls, Wofford, Creek, Elston thing of just getting Indiana to playing these kind of games, basically by the time, these games that mean something late in a season. Just the combination of those two kind of aspects of the team is kind of interesting, and we'll see how it turns out tomorrow.
I mean, beyond just the sort of win it for the seniors emotion, I mean, this is a moment where there is something very tangible at play for Indiana, or in play for Indiana, and you would like to see them, if they are a national title contender, if they are a Final Four contender. Indiana did not back its way into a share of the Big Ten title. In a league this good, you earn that no matter what result clinches it or guarantees it, you earn it. But Indiana's staring at an opportunity to win an outright Big Ten title in its final home game. And you would like to see a team that considers itself and carries itself like a Final Four contender take that kind of opportunity and seize it. Because, I mean, discounting, again, all of the just general emotional whatever of this game, I mean, that's kind of an important, I don't want to say if it's a message to send or whatever you want to call it, but that is an accomplishment sort of in and of itself when you're presented with an opportunity like that and you don't let it slip. That says something about just kind of your mettle and your mental makeup to just sort of walk into a game and say, no, I'm not going to, I'm not losing tonight because this. We've taken ourselves this far. We are going to take that final step. In their way, Ohio State, we've talked a lot about the intangible. We talked a little bit about the tangible. Deshaun Thomas, very good. Surprisingly, I think actually hasn't been their leading scorer in their last couple games. I could be wrong about that, but they are getting better. Some of the other pieces around Thomas are starting to step up,
which I think was one of their really their biggest criticism early on. Was that they're a very good defensive team, but who's your second option basically behind Thomas? A lot of people were just like, to really consider Ohio State an elite contender in the Big Ten, you want to see Lenzel Smith or someone become a legitimate second scoring option on offense behind Thomas, who, he's going to get his 20, 22, 24 points usually. But beyond that, it was always kind of a crapshoot of, where are they going to get their other points from? And now, even Aaron Kraft a couple games ago scored 20 in a game. So, they're starting to get those offensive performances. And I think Crean said that they're in the top 15 on both offensive and defensive efficiency, which not very many teams.
Yeah,
hardly
statistically, they're a very good team, and they will provide their own matchup problems for anyone. When you look at what Indiana did to them in Columbus, it's not just it's too simplistic to say, well, Indiana should win this game because they won that game. But you do look at it and you say, Ohio State really struggled at home to deal with Cody Zeller initially, and that let Indiana kind of establish itself within the game. And then it struggled once it started to have to figure out ways to play Zeller with guys in foul trouble, to play Zeller once he was kind of in his groove or in his rhythm, to adjust without basically, losing other guys in the offense. And there were some questions asked today about Christian Watford and Jordan Hulls, who both struggled against Iowa. You would think that as seniors, not even again on senior night, but just as seniors, they are at a place where their level of consistency suggests that that's just a one-time thing. Indiana certainly cannot afford for the two of them to go, were they like 0 of 15 to combine against Iowa. But this isn't going to be, I think that it's easy to walk into this game feeling like, well, Indiana's going to win because it's fait accompli, and there's nothing. Ohio State might as well just not get off the bus. It is going to be tough for Indiana, particularly if Ohio State can get a second score going early the way they did in Columbus last year when Indiana was doubling, although they had, to be fair, that was really their fourth score because they had William Buford and Deshaun Thomas surrounding Jared Sullinger, but they doubled Sullinger off of Lenzel Smith, and he started knocking down shots immediately. If they can get that happening, if they can get Thomas and then like Kraft and then one other guy going, then that's going to put then that allows Ohio State, a team that's very much built, particularly this year, on its defensive prowess, to sort of turn the game around on an opponent and start pressuring them into getting more out of their possession. We did not see an efficient Indiana team last week at Minnesota or at home against Iowa in terms of getting, really using its possessions well, or as well as it is capable of using them over the course of this whole season. So Indiana is going to have to an extent, as Tom Crean said today, tear away some of the emotion of the game and make sure that it does not override intensity, focus, whatever you want to call it, whatever term you want to use, because this isn't just a walkover. This is not an already decided result. It's going to be a tough game. You do feel like Indiana, you should be a favorite, and as we've both said, it would be kind of hard to see this team for this senior class lose this game. But it's by no means impossible.
Right.
And it's going to be. We've seen a lot of great environments in here the last 2 years, from Kentucky to Ohio State at home last year on New Year's Eve, to Michigan State twice, to Michigan this year, North Carolina. This one is the first one, though, where Indiana is playing for something. I don't know if they're going to be bringing a trophy out to midcourt at the end of the game. I really don't know how it works when you win outright Big Ten championship. But you know, there is the pot of gold is in sight at the end of the rainbow. Essentially, if Indiana wins, everybody can party, and here's the exact reason why. Mm-hmm. So you know, it's going to be a really compelling game. It's going to be, you would think, a really good matchup, and a really good way to kind of close out, 3 Indiana careers. So we'll see what happens.
Maybe more than 3 Indiana.
For now, well, that's true. That's true. And if for anybody wondering, Tom Crean said today that it's never really been his policy to do senior nights for people who aren't seniors. So he said he never did it with Dwayne. He didn't do it with Dwayne Wade, even though he had a pretty good idea that Dwayne Wade was, in fact, turning pro, and he's not going to be doing it with Victor Oladipo or anyone else. So we're going to get out of here because it's starting to get busy in here. For Alex McCarthy, I'm Zach Osterman. The restrooms are that way. And we'll see you tomorrow night. Thanks for watching Inside Indiana Overtime.